This is Jonathan Bowen watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, we're watching the Breakdown show, talking about creative things today. I've had a packed morning. I am, look, I am not at your level, but on my show, we also lead to making big projects, TV, movie things seem to be happening, documentaries. So it's crazy how busy you can be in this world. And I know I say this because I know you get this. You can spend a lot of time working on things that you absolutely are super passionate about and hopeful for. And then it's all just dust until you make it into something. And you can't give up for one instant, but the second you do, you have to completely leave it behind, right? It's crazy. So I thought people might be interested in hearing what your thoughts were on that very ethereal, very impossible yet possible nature of making these kinds of projects.
Yeah, I think that is really true. I mean, it's always so tough, especially with something like a film where you spend years making something and you don't know who's actually going to see it. I mean, if anyone's really going to see it, so you have to have that passion, I think, where it's almost like no matter what happens, I'm still doing this. But
Yeah.
it's just not an easy thing sometimes.
It's not. I'm working on, and they're all impossible, right? I'm working on this impossible project where I'm from a little part of the Bay Area up north in California, and there was a very, very, very historic fight there. One of the earliest big prize fights, and there's a ton of stuff written about it, right?
Nice.
So I'm desperate to get it made because it's just a great story, but it's period piece from the 1880s, and all of a sudden it gets harder and harder and harder. And I would love my hometown or San Francisco, who's part of the story. I would love someone there to just rip a check and just whoosh, of course I want to do this, right? And you and I both know that person or persons, they exist. But what do they need to see? How do you get them to say yes?
Yeah, how
many
do you
years
reach
does
them?
this all take?
Yeah. That's the toughest part, I think, is like, it's so disheartening sometimes to think that there are those people out there who have so much money that it wouldn't really mean much to them to write you a check for like $2 million. But it's like, okay, but how do you actually reach that person? How do you make them care even if you did reach them?
Right.
It's always a really tough thing.
Yeah, it is. And yet it's possible. One of the other things that comes into play is, well, what have you done? And like for me, I'm a producer, right? I am producing things right now. Have I gone cradle to grave producing something? No. Right. And so am I a producer? Well, I've produced the shit out of this show. I've done all kinds of things. I've spent a bunch amount of money. So yeah, for sure. It's like swimming. Like, no, that guy's swimming over there, But like, are you the kind of guy we bet on? Whew, different story.
Right. That is always tough. Like, I think, it's such a hard thing, like, to prove, okay, I've taken this thing from the start to the finish, but is that, like, what was they always ask, what was the ultimate success of this project?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. That it has a pulse, that it did it. That I got all these parts to come together. And there's different kinds of producers too, right? There's producers you need because they know the path, or they know the person, or they get you that meeting with the person who has the check and to rip it.
Right.
Then there's the kinds more like mine, where I kind of orchestrate teams and people, and I try to get things together so that the project, when it gets log jammed, and I'm like trying to crack this log jam apart. There's so many different ways these things can't work, and yet they do, and it's a remarkable thing. And I don't know, is that the part of the story magic that you like more than the story itself, or is it still really the story that matters the most to you?
I mean, I'm definitely about the story. It just, like, I think it's such a tough thing, like, thinking about how do you make the next thing get off the ground,
Yeah.
That is the tough part, as you say, like the story behind the story,
Yeah. When you're working on the story, and you get a little tired of seeing it. I'm not saying that you don't have your heart in it, but when you've looked at the same or had the same roadblock come up, how do you push through that? What's the professional grade answer there?
That is tough. I mean, that's where it comes down to, like, I know how often, especially in America, everyone wants to talk about, like, oh, just you got to work so hard, you got to do this. So, when it comes to like writing, let's say screenwriting,
Yeah.
people say, well, if this is your dream, you should be doing it, 8 hours a day, just like a job. No, that's not it. Like no great writer has ever done that. Like ever. It's
Right.
never happened before. So there's a book called Daily Habits that my wife got me that,
Mm,
I just thought was so valuable because it had all these like what do all the famous writers we know, what have they done? And there's
right.
this one lady who's written 70 novels. She said she never writes more than 1 hour a day. That's it, 1 hour.
Mm,
Because if you keep looking at the same thing, eventually, like you said, you just, even if you love it, you just kind of lose the passion for it. So the mind will keep working if you let it. So what I found is like to look at it, to read it, and then kind of like let it sit. And I would go outside and like float around in the pool or watch, watch some sports or whatever. And even though you don't think you're working, your brain will keep doing it. It'll keep processing. And that's kind of like what helps you, I guess, keep in touch with the passion, because sometimes you'll keep reading the same thing over and over again, and you're reading it, but you're not processing it. You're just so tired. You're like, oh, okay, well, when we're looking, okay, gosh, let me read it again, and eventually you lose track of like what you're actually doing, So you have to kind of let the subconscious mind have its time.
yeah, totally. Now smash cut to the guy who's the iron ass writer who's like, I don't ever give up, and then they're wildly
Right.
successful, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. But that's part of the fight is like what kind of creator am I and how do I link up with people? Maybe I need an iron ass, this is gonna happen kind of leader. Am I, and it's all such a crazy dance. And I'm illustrating this with you because every single project is impossible. And then how many times on the award show where the person's like, oh, I don't even know how we did this, like they
Right.
can't believe it themselves. And then we're like, whatever. It was pretty good.
No, that's true. I mean, I think, you have to, yeah, you have to like stubbornly stick with something, but,
Yeah.
just understanding that like, it's like polishing an agate, like it takes a certain amount of time. Um, and sometimes you can't force it. Like the other problem is like, it's good to get another set of eyes. Like, I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many times I've told my wife about something. Said, well, I've got this. Okay, so the character's here, and so this is a situation. I just can't figure out. I can't figure out where it goes from here.
Right.
And sometimes my wife will be like, well, why wouldn't you do this? Like, I mean, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I just sat here for like 10 hours trying to think of this. And
Yeah.
here's my wife in like 5 minutes comes up with the solution. And it's not because, oh, she's so creative. It's just because you get too close to it. You
Yeah.
can't figure out what actually makes sense. And so if somebody else like that, they've got the solution. So you
It's
gotta
so
you gotta
true.
let it breathe a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've talked to a lot of writers on the show, and we've talked about writing yourself into a corner. And some people like to actually do that, because that
Right.
puts you in a possible situation. And then when you untangle that, you end up where you need to go. And and I can't remember which author it was, but this person said, I'll write myself into a corner on purpose, allow it to happen, and then something will have happened that I didn't know was going to happen, but it happens in the back. And so I take that and I make the line a question to
Right.
create this doubt. And that doubt is the key that unlocks this thing that I didn't even know was going to happen next. And so my past self has informed and I'm like, wow, it's an amazing thing to be able to get yourself out of that trouble. Even more amazing is to trust that you are going to get on that path. And it has to be this back and forth fight with the script, with the manuscript, whatever it's going to be,
Right.
that gets you to the spot where you've got something that is original in a world full of unoriginal ideas.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're right. Like sometimes, I have situations where so I outline everything very carefully, but then as you get to the scene and you start writing it,
Yeah.
and you really know the characters, then you start thinking like, oh, wait a minute, like I actually don't think that's what they would do, you know? And
Yeah.
so then you're like re-outlining because the characters sort of drive the action. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't make them do what needs to happen for the plot. Sometimes, they almost like, it sounds funny, but they almost surprise you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I don't think he would do that. I think he would do
Mm-hmm.
this. And what if
Mm-hmm.
he did that? And then now I've got to re-outline the next 10 scenes because it didn't work the way I thought it would in the outline.
Yeah. But that's the magic, right? That's
Right.
what you want. That's like and this is Pete talking, right? The guy who's never finished a fucking novel or anything. But that's the magic of letting those characters live and have control over your story and being open enough that my friend Kat Connor is a great example. She writes these incredible crime thriller novels, and she becomes omniscient in some ways, where she lives in New Zealand and she's like, I know things about DC that I shouldn't know.
Sure.
And I'm informed by these characters. And when they die, Kat feels grief about them dying. And she's like, and then I know what music they like. And she's not inventing this. This is within her. Boy, it sounds crazy as I say it out loud, right? But writers know this, and people who build things, they know that you have to experience this level of uncertainty, of emotional, powerful acts, whether it's joy, love, pain, or whatever it is. But that's part of the remarkable journey. Even if nobody gives a fuck about your movie,
right?
That's one of the reasons why we go on these stories, right? Is to tell these remarkable things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I definitely think, it takes a level of where you have to really feel strongly about the story, even if you don't know who's going to see it, because that's part of the problem is like, I don't know. It's not a MCU movie or a Star Wars movie where the audience is just sitting there waiting. They can't wait to see it. You don't know what the audience is going to be. So you have to kind of almost be self-satisfied with just telling the story and being like, well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. And, hopefully somebody else likes it as well.
Yeah. When I started this show, it's been 10 years, 2,000 episodes. So it's been a lot of work, right?
Wow.
And but I've stripped it down to the things that I can control and need to worry about. Like this is nothing against you. We were supposed to start and be live at 12 o'clock. Like that's, or 1 o'clock. That's the standard, right? And I've learned that, like, this is this world. And in this world, the podcast world, the live stream world, production is prominent over perfection. It's more important to just cycle through these things. Now, that's not, I'm sure movies aren't as loosey-goosey as that, but there is an element of this is how this is going to be, because if we don't do this, one, we don't have the money for it or the budget at the time, any of this, we're going to get this next thing done because of this. And one of the indie directors I've talked to, he's like, there's times when I'm like, we've got a little bit more sunshine or sunlight. It's perfect right now. What can we do? And then him and his partner, and he'll go, hey, look, 180 the cameras and shoot this way, and we'll grab this one scene. And so they'll make magic within the magic making process, because they know, again, they have a dance that they know how to do. And there's all these opportunities for that, right?
Yeah, I think it is all about, finding that magic. And like sometimes things don't go exactly as you thought. I remember there was one scene in my film where, I'll give Jesse Metcalfe like really big credit. It was like a montage sequence and they're cleaning up the store, they're trying to make it look nice. And I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. And so I kind of like, all right, cut. I think we're good. I think we got it. And so Jesse comes up to me and he kind of like pulls me aside and he's like, I think we can do better. And I was like, oh, like what's wrong with it? And he's like, I just don't think the energy is as good as it could have been. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know, what do you think we should do? And so he's like, I want to put Micah on that box. And I'm like, inside of the box? And he's like, yeah, we tried it when you were looking away, like when you're talking to Ryan. I want to put him in the box. I mean, is he okay with that? It's like, yeah, no, he's fine with it. We already talked about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So then, we roll again, and he puts Micah inside of this box because Micah's so little. and he's like, he tapes up the box and he's like carrying him around. It's hilarious. And we're all trying to like stifle our laughter, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to be a montage anyways. We're not even going to have audio.
Right.
And as soon as like Micah gets out of the box, you could see he's like, I don't know, he's like in a better mood. There's more playfulness. And we play out the rest of the montage and they just had so much fun. And Jesse was right. Like it was much better than what we had filmed. And you have to almost like feel that energy. And I think in that moment I was kind of settling for like, it's good enough. Like we can make it work. And Jesse's like, yeah, no, we can do better. So it's like finding that flow where you're like, hey, like let's make sure this is great, not just good enough.
Yeah, right. Production perfection, and somewhere in there is what works, right? And
right.
Because sometimes you just need to, you don't have that Stanley Kubrick budget to shoot something 45 times,
right,
and then sort that out in post. I mean,
yeah.
When I'm doing my consulting and helping somebody build something, they're like, "Well, I'll just send you like 15 of these things," and I'm like, "No, you're not. No, you're not. Look, you're welcome to, and then I'm going to send you the bill. Let's put in as close to perfection into the can right now." So that we don't have to go back and fix things. That works in my little stupid world, right? If you're doing whatever it's going to be, we're always trying to trim it. Actually, let me ask you, let's quit burying the lead, by the way.
Yeah.
Jonathan has this wonderful movie called The Comic Shop. It comes out a couple days ago. And here's the link for it right there on Amazon. And if you want them to go somewhere else, we'll send them there. But
that's
at a minimum, they can go there. And it's a great ride. And look, we'll get into the story here in a minute, but when we think about all of these things that we try to do, first off, you made this movie. Congratulations. It's super exciting. If I had doubled your budget, could you have made a better movie?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a couple things you could always do. The problem too is that when it comes down to budgets in Hollywood, it's like, I heard this before and I kind of ignored the advice, but there's certain budget ranges that work and there's some that don't. So ours works for making a good movie, but it probably doesn't work for making your money back. It's almost like you've got an industry where you have to spend a certain amount to get like, the A-list talent. And then that guarantees but if you ignored that part of it and said, forget about that, just like, it doesn't matter making your money back or not. Like, could you make a better movie? There are certain little things that like a little bit more money would have helped with. And also that money would have afforded us more time. That's the big thing too. Like maybe instead of filming in 15 days, we have 18 days. That we did in our first schedule. And then it like sort of got whittled to 15. And I'm like, oh man, like I remember thinking, so at 15, we've got to combine these things on the same day. And I mean, all right, I guess we could do that, but and then it became like the last location, like it has to be a convention hall with a bowling alley there. Like that's what it has to be, because that's the only way we're going to film those two things in the same day. So, and we found it, but it's like not ideal. Like you'd rather have, a full day for each of those things. So
right. And when I ask that question, it's because people in this business have to figure out what it takes. Like there's this documentary I'm working on, right? And it's got a lot of very notable baseball people in it. And the person I'm trying to make it was like, well, let's just take the camera crew to all these different important people in baseball instead of flying them in, putting them up in a hotel. And I'm like, one costs more than the other. And so, sure, we can do that. You need to raise $35,000 to do that. And I'm like, wait, what? Well, that's hard to do. And so you got to figure out how to do it, right? So I guess when I'm bringing this stuff up about money and where to spend it and everything, what do you think? Like, first off, let's say this too. When you are agile and you are a little more boutique, you can do things that a studio, especially a big studio, could never do. Not that they don't have the know-how, but the profitability for you. Like, let's say you make 25% back on top of the cost of the movie. You're going to be over the moon. A studio doesn't want that. They want some
Yeah.
number greater than 100% back, right? So it's very hard to find. I'm talking big studios like
Yeah,
Paramount,
yeah.
they're not going to even consider that, and that's like horror always makes tons of money, but the big studios are interested in that genre for the most part. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not the percent for them, it's the dollars, you know what I mean? Like, so if you spent $6 million on a horror film and you made $9 million total back,
Yeah.
like, that's not very exciting. Like, I mean, it would be for you and I, but you're
Well,
right.
yeah,
For them, they'd be like,
yeah,
well, it's $3 million bucks. Like, that's not really going to move the needle on our stock price that much, you
right,
know?
right. And that's really where a lot of the no's come from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
But the indie world is wide open, right? You can find someone who's like, oh, $3 million, that'd be a dream. Let's do it twice. Let's already
Right.
plan a sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. I think that the indie world we live in now is pretty brutal, and it's becoming like there's certain budgets that just don't really work. Um,
Yeah.
my budget would be one of them. But like I would recommend, that somebody make a movie probably under 100,000 or over 3 million in general.
Mm,
Because at over 3 million, you can afford an A-lister for a couple of days. You pay $1 million, get them for 2 days. Um, that will guarantee your investment. Other than that, like, don't spend that much. Like, really, like, try to
yeah.
see if you can't do it for under 100 grand, because then it goes to something like Tubi or any of these AVOD services.
Right.
Sorry, I refuse to call them AVOD. I don't get that, but
Yeah.
then you can actually potentially make your money back. But when you spend like $1 million, you don't really have quite enough to get an A-lister, and you also have a large amount of people who have to see this movie to break even. So that might be 10 million people on Tubi. That's
Yeah.
insane. I mean, if 10 million people see your movie, you did something right, but not necessarily make a profit.
Yeah. Yeah. How important is profit? I mean, if you're producing, writing, directing, all these things, you're getting money from folks. And I know for me, like, I'm desperate to get these people paid back. Like, it is bad for me physically because I'm just like, how do I make this work? And it's because I need money now to get on an airplane to go do something, right? And
Right.
it's such stress. At least for me, it's a ton of stress as I try to like keep my heart into this thing, pick the right time to put energy into things. Oh, and by the way, how many projects can we work on at one time? Because it's not one; it's got to be a bunch. So, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big thing because the money back is what allows you to go try to do it again.
Right.
And that's for me, it's like, it's always been the big thing where it's like, all right, I put all my effort into this thing, but if it doesn't, work out, then how do I turn this movie into a third movie? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the really tough part. And it's also like, how stubborn are you? Like, so I've already been thinking about that a bit in the last few days, where it's like, I don't know. I went through the little bit of depression where it's like, I don't know. I think that it's going to be really tough for us because, the streamers sort of passed on the movie. And
Yeah.
I guess they're not really interested. And that's what I understand, is that I was told that they're interested in female skewing thrillers. I'm probably not the best guy to write and direct that, just being
Right.
honest. So
Right.
that's a tough one where it's like you have something you feel is like really good, but how do you make money on it?
Yeah.
And knowing those things that I know, I also kind of think, well, I'm pretty stubborn, so I'm not really going to give up. But then it's also kind of like, well, if I have to make a movie for 70,000, then I don't know that Hollywood's going to like what comes out, because I
Yeah.
don't care I don't care what they think anymore. I'll just do whatever I want. I don't care. Like, to me, that kind of money is not significant. Like,
Right.
it's something, but it's like, I can make a $70,000 movie every like 3 years,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it becomes like, I made this for like commercial purposes. Like, not really. I mean, it's my heart, my true story.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you can make something for a small enough budget, then you're just like, I guess I'll just tell whatever story I want to tell, and I don't
That's right.
really need a lot of people to watch it at that budget level,
Right. Yeah.
So it's a tough
It's
one.
a real thing. I don't
Yeah.
want to cut you off, but I want to just
No.
mention this. When I talk to my friends who are in the movie making business, like, hey, Pete, you come across these great stories, great people, we want them.
Yeah.
Because what they want to do is make the thing that excites them. They
Right.
understand that, rich person F has a lot of money and they will take their money to make the project, but it's not what
Right.
they want to do. And so anytime they can find something to like, this will
Right.
move the needle, I can take this to Hollywood, or we can get this made for a small amount of money. And between the three of us, we'll find the $70,000.
Right.
But it definitely frees you up from how you're supposed to behave and what you're supposed to shoot. And that is
Right.
a wonderful curse / blessing.
No, you're right. I mean, because you do get to the point where it's like, just keep going higher in budgets, and like, what are you looking at? I mean, when you get high enough, it has to appeal to everyone. Like, let's say it's Minecraft. They know that, okay, this is one of the most popular video games ever. I actually personally, I'm a big gamer. I've never played Minecraft. It was kind of after my time, and to me, it was always kind of juvenile, but they're smart. They know that there is a huge market of people. Like my brother-in-law's just turned 15, so that's up his alley. I mean, he played Minecraft since he was like 3 years old,
Yeah.
And so when they make these movies at a huge budget, they have to make sure that it's this massive audience that really does appeal to everyone, or MCU movies. But the smaller the budget that you go to, you say, I don't really need that. Like, so I'll give you an example. Like, I've toyed with making a script about like a child-free woman, because my wife and we're child-free. We're like in that group that we never wanted kids. It just does not appeal to us at all. But that's gonna piss off like 70% of people. I mean, it's not even political. It's like on both sides of the political aisle, there's going to be a lot of people saying, how dare they? I mean, this is what you need to do. Like, you can't be advocating that. And it's like, but if you have 10% of the audience who's like, oh my gosh, like no one has ever made a movie that's like actually targeted at me. So your audience is like, it's small, but it's interested. It's small but interested, So that's kind of like where you can go with a smaller budget. Even the comic shop. Well, how many people read comics anymore? Well, it's not huge. They say it's about 50 million worldwide. So you're right. A studio might go 50 million worldwide. I mean, that's not that interesting really to us, But like as an indie film, you might go, hey, 50 million people. That's a good core audience. It's not that bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If I get $1 from 5% of them, oh my God,
Right. And you're like, okay, I mean, maybe this would work. So it's all about like gearing the budget to the audience. And the more you spend, the huger audience you need. It's like why when we see some of these blockbusters, well, you can't put something in the script that's negative towards China. I mean, China's a huge box office market. I mean, and look at what was it? I can't remember. Was it Transformers 4 or something that they actually set a bunch of it in Beijing because they know that this movie's going to make a bunch of money in China.
Right.
And I mean, that's always bothered me a little bit, like the pandering to China, because part of me is like, who gives a crap what China likes or doesn't like? I don't care. Like, especially because they cheat the studios like absolute hell. I mean, they claim they give the studios 25% back. So if it makes like 200 million in China, the US gets 50 million. It's a lot of money, $50 million. Not true. They actually did some independent audits that found that China fudges the numbers, so actually gives the studios about 10% back. So if it made 200 million in China, there's 20 million going back to the studio, which, hey, don't get me wrong, isn't nothing, but I don't know.
We agreed on
pandering, to be honest.
Like, well, like, and that's just an age-old.
Oh, we can't offend China,
right? That's that age-old ruse too. Like, you publish I'll just pick on CBS. You publish your record through CBS, music, wherever, or Sony, or whoever it's going to be. They're going to count differently than you do. You're like, looks like we got 10 million albums sold. And they're like, oh, we got it at 2, and kind of a disappointment.
Right.
And now you've got to decide what you're going to do about that. Take the
Right.
money that's in hand. And by the way, then they'll come back and be like, we can't wait to make another one. You're like,
Oh,
I thought you
yeah.
did terrible, you know?
Yeah, wasn't that like I forget, like, well, they call it like creative accounting in Hollywood,
Yeah.
but I forget the one. I think it was Braveheart though, where they were basically in their reports trying to claim that, oh, no, Braveheart lost $100 million. Yeah, I mean, there's no profit there at all. It's lost a lot of
Right.
money, and we're all like, but it didn't though. Like,
It didn't.
so what they'll
Yeah.
say in the accounting is, well, you see, the film itself may have made some money, but to keep the studio open for the whole year cost, $400 million. And
Right.
as we figure, we only released 5 movies. So like 80 million of that was, keeping the studio open for your movie, you see? So there was no profit. And you're like, no. That's not how profit works. That's not how any of us think of profit at all.
Right. Yeah. And Jack Warner had to sell his house on Hollywood Hills. And now what's, like, you guys made some money,
Oh, I know. And it's all very funny the way that they do it.
Yeah.
So when you're making a contract with the distributor, one of the most important things you can do, if you're an indie filmmaker out there, and this is what you need to do, is make sure that you cap expenses. Don't just let them spend whatever, because otherwise they'll say, well, yeah, I mean, look, hey, your indie movie we did well in it. It was very successful. We made about 4 million, but like, we spent that all in marketing your movie. Actually, we spent 5 million. So like, you still owe us $1 million, but that's okay. Don't worry about that. We'll get it back. We'll get it back as we go along. And you're like thinking like, man, like everybody's seen this movie. How is it possible I don't get a dime? So if you at least cap the expenses at some level, they can't charge any more than that because it's in the legal contract. So we spent $1 million, and they're like, well, that's nice. I don't really care because the expenses were capped at 50 grand. So tough shit, like it's kind of one of those things. But
yeah. There's the whole dance with that, right? And now one of the good things, these things are all like good and bad, right? The good thing is if you make a movie that makes the studio happy, they come back and they want another movie and you get to do it again.
That's
so
right.
That's
the biggest. You're right. That's the best thing in a way. You want the studio to be happy. Sure.
And if you reliably make money and all you need is more money to make more money, then they're going to fund you to make so they're really, it's just, where are you at and how comfortable are you playing that game? And I know directors are like, I don't really want to get any higher than I am. I'm comfortable. I control things. I know how it works. And so, sure, I'll take a big hit, but I don't want to, I like this spot right here, and because here's the thing I'll say, and you tell me if you think you're right. Vertical ambition doesn't always serve you well in the arts, because oftentimes you end up far away from where you want to do.
It's so funny you say that, because I think that's so true. Like I had that discussion with my wife once, because I gave, that surprising answer where it's like, oh, wouldn't you like to be making $100 million studio film? And I'm like, not really. No, like, actually, I think I have more power than they do. Oh, what? No way. Because they have so much budget. I'm like, well, hey, wait a second. That guy, one of my indie friends, he made a movie for 70 grand. He gets exactly the movie he wants. Exactly. No one is there to tell him what to do. You may like it, you may not like it, but his story can be told for 70 grand. That's how it is. Now we make a movie for 100 million, and I've got 12 executives at Disney telling me, so it's great that you think he should have a gold chain, but we're actually seeing a silver chain. Well, our research, you see, has said that silver gold sends a certain message. Silver doesn't. And there's this nonsense conversation for an hour about the guy's necklace, which, no one cares about. And so you get to a certain point where it's like, what kind of freedom do you have? Or give you an example, like my house right now. I could have afforded an even bigger house, an even nicer house. But then I have a big mortgage. And then I have to make a bunch of money to service the mortgage. Instead, I own my house almost free and clear. I've got solar panels that pay for half my electricity. So, yeah, there are people with nicer houses. I'm more free than they are because I don't have to make that kind of money to live my life. Like I can say, yeah, no, I don't really feel like doing that. Like I don't need the money. I'm good. Other people, well,
Yeah.
you know, you got these celebrities who are so rich and they go bankrupt. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Like Robert De Niro or Nicolas Cage, because they have set their lifestyle so high that unless they've got 300,000 coming in per month, it's not enough money to live.
Yeah.
That's crazy for you and I. We're like 300,000. That should be enough for like years. But no, they're like, no, that's a monthly. I got to make that every month. Otherwise, you know. And it's like, I don't consider that freedom, really. You know, I don't want that life. You know?
So much in that, right? And I don't know if you read Lisa Marie / Riley Keough's book about Lisa Marie's life, but when Lisa Marie was married to Nicolas Cage, you hear about a person spending with such abandon, like he's a Rockefeller, and he's not. He's an actor. He has made and will continue to make a lot of money, but at some point you will go bankrupt if you are just buying.
And didn't he have like he had like over 10 houses, I believe, at one point.
Yeah,
I mean, it was almost an affliction to keep buying more houses. You know.
Yeah, and it's crazy what they're forced to do to live the life that we expect them to live. Because some of it's that too, like that you have to fix your face and you have
You're
to,
right.
you know, and and all of these things take away from your freedom.
Hugh Jackman had to eat,
right. Yeah, right. Hugh Jackman had to eat boiled chicken for decades so he could stay in shape for Wolverine, you know, and he talked about it. Like, and he's like, yeah, that's not fun. It's my job though, right? It's not your job to do those things. And so that life, like any big life that people get to put their eyes on, there's a cage in that big life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's true. It's like every once in a while, you know, I'm sure you've seen it. We are all sort of like, we don't want to say anything, you know, don't want to body shame, but you know, when you see that athlete is just in perfect shape, the whole playing career, like 15 years, perfect shape. And then it's no joke, like 2 or 3 years later, and they're announcing, and it's like they've gained like 80 pounds. And so it kind of makes you think, oh, okay, I see. Oh, okay. So the fitness level wasn't part of like a balanced life. It was part of the job. Like they needed to stay in shape to play football or to play basketball. Whereas like most of us, we don't make, like, I don't get money for staying in shape. It's just part of who I am as a person. For them, they're like, no. I already did that. I did 15 years of eating perfectly and going to the gym, waking up at 6 a.m. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm retired.
That's part of what I'm retired from. Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know, but you're right. And I think, so actually in my first movie, I covered a bit about the main character is an actress. Like, so it's kind of an industry movie. And yeah, she's like going bankrupt despite making all this money. And so the boyfriend is like, how are you out of money? Yeah, you know, you make all this money. And she says, well, look, I mean, I can't wear the same dress twice on the red carpet because I've got these people judging me. And, you know, so part of it is like, I do feel a little sympathetic because if you read about like, especially like some female celebrities, security when they go out is not optional. It's not something that they can choose to do. They need security. And if you're paying for security a fair amount of the time, you're looking at 20 grand a month. I mean, that's just reality, at least. So when it's like, oh, look at this celebrity, they're so out of touch. You know, they say it needs 50,000 a month to live. Well, yeah, they do. Because if they live in LA and then they go out to these events and they have their private security and they have their personal assistant, it's going to cost a lot of money, a lot more than you and I, because no one knows who the hell we are. So what would I need security for? I go to Target and I get my, you know, it's not a big deal. But like, imagine that you're Taylor Swift. Oh my gosh. How would you even do something normal, like going to a restaurant or getting gas? You can't even do it. You might as well pay somebody else to do it.
You know? Yeah, no, there's, you know, the reality is, and I've gotten to meet a lot of people. Let's use my life here for example. I have all of the freedom I could want. My life is very small. It's controlled in terms of cost. Things that are expensive hurt me, and I have to figure out what to do to adapt to that. There's the downside. It's a tightrope to walk across to make sure I've got enough money each month. But I can keep the lights on. I can do things. I don't need much. And so when someone's like, "Oh my gosh, I have all these financial problems," and I'm like, "You are loaded. You just think that you're broke. Like, if you cut a lot of these extra things out, you don't need them." But in Hollywood, security. And if you've stayed skinny, you're a tiny little precious little beautiful ballerina bodied girl, you are vulnerable to anybody on the street because they're all basically bigger than you, And so I could pick up and run for a significant amount of distance with a 100-pound girl. I could just grab her, hold her arms, and run. And I'm not trying to do that, but they can't feel safe in that world. Like if I put my hand around some little 5'1" tiny little actress girl around their wrist would be held in my hand, and there'd be nothing they could do about it. They could punch me all they wanted. It's not
true. It won't hurt.
Yeah. And so you got to pay your agent, you got to pay your lawyer, you got to pay your staff, and when you make enough money, you can't do things like drive or go to the store. Like that's your work, because my work brings in all the money. And so all of a sudden, that giant bloom of money, it gets cut down by over half before you've got rid of your agent, your lawyer, your taxes, your just day-to-day living expenses.
Yeah, you're right.
Then you have to hire staff.
There's so many people you have to pay, and there's also like so many people with their hands out. I mean, the other interesting thing, I believe that if you look around you in the world, you'll see it everywhere you look. But money isn't it isn't like, it doesn't go up at the rate that you think it does. So sometimes I'll be looking at a house and I'm thinking, well, what? Like this house is twice as much money as mine in the same area of town, and it's 10% bigger. I don't get it. Like I have an unobstructed view of the Las Vegas Strip. I have a perfect view. I live in a safe area. That's how money works sometimes. It's like, no, twice as much money does only get you 10, 20% better house. Even though you and I think, no, it should be twice as good. But like go to a fancy restaurant, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute. I mean, this thing costs 10 times as much as the local burger joint, and it's actually less food, but it's better quality. I mean, it happens all the time. So it's like, that's how lifestyle sometimes goes too, is that somebody can live like twice as good of a life as you, but it costs them 10 times as much money to live that life. So you're like, I don't know. I'm not sure that's really worth it.
Yeah. That balance, that's huge. And we talked a lot about the freedom and being able to do these things and understanding, it's easy just to minimize someone. Oh, that person's a libtard, that person's a MAGA, that person's a whatever. And all of a sudden you realize, I don't want their problems because they're hard. And most people I meet in entertainment are wonderful people. I've met a couple of people that were negative, and it doesn't matter who they were, but most everybody else is just the sweetest person. And I've met a bunch of billionaires who are hugely charitable, and they're smart with their money, but they're like, yeah, I know my job is to help people. And so I do. And so all of a sudden you realize like most everybody, and I mean, the vast majority, to where you can extend trust to all these people, they're all trying to do the right thing at the right moment. Yeah. Maybe they have bad days, but we all get bad days.
That's right.
And
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think, most people, like, they're really trying the best. I actually think it's funny to use those words when, like, let's say that I agree with something, you should agree with something that Trump is doing. You should. There should be one thing. Because even, if you're on the other side, you should agree with something, right? That Biden liked or Obama. So I love to say it of myself. I'm like, well, not to be a libtard, but I think that, well, not to be a maggot, but I think it's very funny to like throw it at yourself and just have a good time with the labels, because most of us we think for ourselves. And this whole, like, you have two sides of everything. I don't know about that. Like, I don't want some party telling me what I think. I'll decide what I think.
Sure.
And I don't want to. Well, I just checked the memo today. Well, what is it? What's it saying? Oh, okay. Oh, this is what we think today. Okay. No,
the talking points, right?
Like we're not doing that. Like I think what I think, and there's going to be a lot of things that I don't agree with. So I think once we talk as human beings, then we see each other as more than just a label.
Right.
And that was a big thing for me. Like, let's say the comic shop. So okay, I grew up reading a bunch of comics when I was younger. Well, yeah, but I had a very interesting experience because I was very sporty when I was growing up. I did track, I played every sport. I
Yeah.
loved I loved running around, love sports. So I had about 3 friends that were like the jocks in the school. And then I had 3 friends that were the nerds. And I did mostly different things with them. Like I knew with my nerd friends, we're not going to be playing basketball. It's
Right.
not going to happen. But that's okay because we played video games and we talked about comics and all that stuff. So I kind
Yeah.
of got both sides with each
Sure.
group of friends. I will say that the interesting thing, and I've noticed this as an adult too, is that video games, like I know what girls think sometimes, completely wrong. Girls will think, well, video games, oh, that's nerdy. Video games have nothing to do with that. Every guy plays video games. Like my friend who's the CFO of a biotech company, he plays video games. My
Right.
radiologist friend, huge gamer. My police officer friend, huge gamer. I don't really actually know anyone who doesn't play video games. So that's one of the things that united us is because I could play with my jock friends or my nerd friends, and they all wanted to game. So it was kind of one of those things where like you don't necessarily need a label because what we all like to do is individual. Like
Yeah.
you can't. Well, oh, he likes Dungeons and Dragons. Well, what if he likes Dungeons and Dragons, but he's also like a marathon runner? What is that? Is
Right.
that a jock? Is that a nerd? I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. So in my world, growing up, very similar, and still to this day is I do a lot of things. I was for sure sporty and all that, but I wasn't a jock, right? And I had a lot of friends in the chess club, but I wasn't a chess nerd, and so and ultimately I became a spy. And you can kind of see how that works is I could go to all these different groups and relate to them and then communicate across like, oh, by the way, all these knucklehead skateboard guys, they're really good athletes. Like, what do you mean they're athletes? Like you haven't seen what they can do with their feet. And it
Oh
turns out
yeah,
they could throw and catch balls all day long. They just didn't want to play with you guys because they didn't feel welcome and you didn't want to welcome them. So, here we are. We're going to kick your asses in football and you're going to be like, who the hell are these guys? And
right.
it's hilarious when that happens.
No, that's true. I mean, I think that that's something that like so in the comic shop, I explore a little bit how our younger character doesn't he doesn't see eye to eye with his dad because he's just not he's not big into sports and his dad's trying to like get him into that
Yeah,
and I think that is always like it's just not for everybody. I was I got into sports a lot because of my dad, I suppose. Like I remember you know I didn't really care when I was super young. And I kept walking into the living room to bother my dad. I just wanted to talk to him, It was like, he's in here. And I remember that's kind of how I became a 49ers fan because every time I walked into the room, Joe Montana's slinging a pass down the field. And I go from like looking at my dad with the TV behind me to kind of being like, oh, okay,
yeah,
that's actually pretty exciting. That's actually kind of fun.
right,
But it's all about the experiences that you have, and that's why I tried to put in the movie where like there's this relatability gap
sure,
where you have a kid, you want your kid to be into the same things you are, but they're not. They're their own person. They're not like just a
right,
mini you. You don't get to decide what they're into.
yeah, 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 yeah. I used to work at Tower Records back in the old days, and so when I saw, I didn't see the whole thing from your movie, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to buy it, and everybody else should do that. And the link is right there, so grab
Nice.
grab a friend, and watch this thing. But when you worked at a place like Tower, you saw that, like like in our store, working was pretty girl, lots of makeup. There was cute girl with just mascara, just eyeliner, whatever. There was rock and roll chick who smelled like cigarettes and drank vodka straight out of the plant while she worked.
Oh,
There was
man.
all these different characters from a goddamn movie. We had a guy who was so rock and roll, he basically dressed like a pirate. We had a guy around the corner at the stereo store who was a part-time big time wrestler and also kind of looked like a pirate. And so you had all of these people in this orbit, super hot Latina high school chick that comes in and the guys just can't stop talking to her, And
Right.
we have this orbit in this place. And,
Right.
there are these cultural moments that are
Like, it
really
attracts a
powerful.
bunch
And
of
you
different
go,
people.
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's so interesting because you're right. It attracts like a bunch of different groups, but all in the love of music, right? Maybe different kinds
Yeah,
of music, but
right.
they're all coming together in this place, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah. The fighters, because Sacramento had a lot of boxers, like Tony the Tiger Lopez, when he or Loretta Garza would win, they'd come in and they'd buy stacks of CDs back when that meant something. Sacramento
Right.
Kings players would come in, right? And so you did have this cultural magnet where even when we weren't working, we would stay. And that's comic book stores. You stay, you're like, yeah, comic books, that's why we're here, but I'm here because of you all here. Like, oh, there's Ray. Ray just came in. And that's the magic about these little communal areas that build something magic. And even if it's just a small little comic shop, you can
Yeah.
do a lot with that.
Yeah. I mean, something that you touched on that's interesting to me is like, so I'm a little bit of a homebody, but I think it's really important to have these communal spaces because I remember like sort of maybe towards the middle or end of the pandemic, I was going on some rant to my wife, because I was talking about we don't need movie theaters anymore. No one goes to the movie theater. They just want to sit home, watch a movie.
Yeah.
And like, well, nobody goes to the mall anymore. You just go to Amazon and buy it. And I remember just kind of like angrily, ranting to my wife and saying, well, maybe we don't need anything. Maybe we just put Amazon fulfillment centers everywhere. We all have houses, Amazon fulfillment, and just forget it. Everybody sits home. No one goes anywhere. And it gets to the point where it's like, I'm sorry. I hope I'm not the only one who that's not a society I want to live in. Like,
Yeah.
we need to have
Yeah.
some communal spaces, whether it's craft breweries, whether it's comic book shops or mall. I mean, we cannot just be sitting at home, pushing the click button, getting
Yeah.
stuff, and none of us ever go anywhere. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not really a life that I'm a big fan of. Like, yes, I love convenience. Of course, I use Amazon as much as the next guy. But sometimes I still want to leave the house and go somewhere where
Yeah.
I can meet other people and share in something like cinema or like a comic shop or like
Yeah.
whatever, without us just all being basically confined to our homes.
I know, right? Like, it's not a prison, like you should want to get out. And I get that. I'm from a different generation. I'm a Gen X kid. And so I latchkeyed. And so, I would tell my mom, I had to tell my mom where I was going to be. But I could say I'm going to be riding my bike. And she knew that meant I'd be somewhere in town,
Right. Yeah.
And that was it. And so I don't
Different
mind going out.
generations, right?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
you
Yeah.
didn't have a helicopter parent.
Oh my gosh. And I don't helicopter. Well, I didn't primarily raise my kid because I went and did war stuff, but I would say this is going to be your responsibility. And
Right.
here's how you do it. And if you want help, I'm going to help you. But I also expect you to fail so that you can learn this lesson. And so, like, she and I were driving way before she was even 15. We were driving because I didn't want her first time to be with some other person who had never met her. So am I breaking the law a little bit? Oh, okay. I'm being careful about this. Though I wasn't being reckless. We weren't driving on big boulevards, We were driving miles an hour around the neighborhood with her in my lap, And that's a different world. I'm excited to go run errands, like for my special someone. If we need to go to the store, I love to go to the store, and I know most of the checkers, and I'm excited to see one in particular. And so when that person's working, I'm stoked to see a checker, right? And when we live in our house and never leave it, you don't get those kind of engagements. And even if it's just
That's
5
true.
minutes, that person,
No, you're right.
look forward to seeing each other.
Yeah, those little interactions can be nice. I mean, I remember I lived in a couple condos where, we have the front desk like concierge, and I talk to them every day. I talk to them more than most of my friends, Just it wasn't long, like you said, just a couple minutes, like, hey, how's it going,
Right.
But yeah, absolutely.
But this goes back to all the way back to the beginning though. Like, tastemakers know what tastes good, and so you don't need a big studio. It's great if that works out, but there are so many people that come to Hollywood because they've got this incredible story that is movie grade. But what they don't have are the relationships to get the door open. Like if you're like trying to sell something to HBO, you don't just go show up and knock on their door and do a pitch because they're going to say no to you.
Yeah, they make the gates fairly high, and I will say it's a little. I know the myth that Hollywood wants to sell, which I think is good for. I think it's good for the industry, but I don't think it's good for us. is usually like, oh, no. Like, yeah, if you have a great idea, you're passionate, you work hard, yeah, there's a place for you. I'm like, I mean, is there though? Like, because I see so many movies where I wonder, well, this is interesting. Like, huh? This movie wasn't very good. So then I'm like on Wikipedia, like, well, what's up with this thing? Oh, okay. Premiered at Toronto. Interesting. That's a great festival. 30% score from critics. That's not good. Not sure why Toronto would take that, but okay. And then, well, how did they get the money? Like, who directed this movie? And then you look at the director and you're like, oh, wow. Okay, they're related to X, the number of times you see that. And that's the ones you don't see it are the more concerning. Really. Well, no. This is not a Nepo baby because they don't seem to be related to anyone. I'm like, yeah, but that person's from a very wealthy family.
Yeah.
And they had the opportunity to pursue the arts because they didn't need to make money. So I would just caution people that if you want to make it in Hollywood and you're not from a rich family and no one in your family does film, I'm not going to discourage you do it if that's what you want to do. But just understand that the odds are stacked against you. Like, that's the reality of it.
Yeah. The odds are stacked. And no matter what, the odds are stacked against you.
No matter what they are.
Right.
Even for people who are Nepo babies, it doesn't guarantee success. It gives them a leg up. It gives them the chance to start. But if they don't have the talent, they will be washed out. That,
yeah. And we say Nepo baby, and that's like a pejorative term. It's not friendly to say that to somebody.
No.
But there's a lot of people who are Carl Reiner and Rob Reiner. Is Rob Reiner a Nepo baby, or is he hugely talented?
He's hugely talented. Yeah. Like you may say like, oh, Nicolas Cage. Sure that his family was in film, but Nicolas Cage is one of the most talented actors out there. I mean, he's absolutely amazing. So definitely, it is not to take away that these people deserve this.
No, I agree with you, and I know you weren't trying to say that, by the way. So.
But sometimes it's like it's just to keep in mind that, like, I guess it's to keep in mind, don't be too hard on yourself either. Like, if you're trying really hard and you're trying to make something happen, and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I just don't have it. It's like, well, I mean, maybe, but like, it's also possible that you don't have the built-in connections. I mean, you've got people who made it. We're like, where did they go? Oh, Beverly Hills High School. Who did they meet at Beverly Hills High School? They already had 20 connections. By the time they graduated high school, they had all these connections. The rest of us grew up somewhere else, and we didn't know anyone who wanted to do film. And if you told friends and family you wanted to be a filmmaker, they look at you like you're crazy. They're like,
because you are.
What now? Like, if you said, I want to be an electrician, or like, I want to be a doctor, or be an engineer.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah.
But you're like, I want to make movies.
Yeah. It is. And folks not from that world don't know that world. And so it is scary, right? But you and I both know this. I used to live in Las Vegas, and you live in that area as well.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful place. If you do some kind of art, you can have a professional job with benefits there. You'll do that one thing for a long time, but if you're a dancer, if you're a choreographer, if you're and when I say, Vegas is a cultural well, and it's probably the crown that in New York, it's probably the crown jewel for any kind of, if you have the world's biggest dream for sculptures and you want to rent out an entire building and put a display in it and sell tickets, Vegas is the place to do that. I don't know what would go in the world, but they have a room for that there in Vegas. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that, because where you live, it influences so much who you meet, right? Like, if you're in LA, I've been to a coffee shop before and had a meeting with somebody where, they're like, hey, don't look behind you too much, but remember Alias? Like, it's the guy from Alias, things like that, because it's just, it's LA. It's where everybody lives. And so my wife was doing this fitness class. This was probably last year at some point, and this couple is there, and, they're killing it. I mean, everything's awesome. The flexibility, the stamina, and she's kind of like getting a little disheartened, like, man, I mean, these guys are like, they're really with it, And so she starts talking to him a bit. She's like, yeah, how are you guys in such good shape? And they were like, oh, well, we actually are with Cirque du Soleil. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. Okay, I don't feel so bad now. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'm
So
a professional athlete. Yeah. Oh
right,
my
and you
God.
hear those
Yeah.
things, and like those are jobs that you're not going to be in, like Minneapolis, and hearing some. Oh, I work for the circus.
Right.
What? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
here? What circus? Or like
Yeah.
Portland,
Yeah.
Oregon, where I grew up. That's not going to happen. So depending on where you live, like you said, New York and Vegas have a bunch of performers that
Right.
just regular. They're pretty regular people.
Right.
Believe it or not,
Which, by
most
the
of
way,
them
impacts
earn
the
more
economy
money.
because just for Cirque, there are probably several master level orthopedists in town. Because, like, I
Right.
don't know, depending on what show you go to, these artists have died doing their job, and they blow out
Oh, I
shoulders
know.
and knees
No.
all the time, and that's all the time. You don't know it because it gets covered with the show and everything, but that's a true
There's
thing. And
stories
so,
like that. Like obviously, I don't have an interest in talking about that and getting sued, but
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
yes, there's things like that where
yeah.
when they hurt
And I'm
themselves.
not saying negative things. I'm saying the nature of that work, just
Oh
like being a
yeah.
football player, breaks bodies, right? And whether
Oh,
there's neglect
absolutely.
or anything like that, but that
It's
means
you're putting your body through it 5 nights a
world-class.
week or 4 nights a week or whatever it is.
Yeah, 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 and so the entire economy changes to match up with that demand because you do have these people. When you have all of these world class musicians coming, someone's more than one has to be a world class luthier,
Right.
and be able to fix any instrument that walks in the door that's stringed, and so all of these things grow out of that, and it does become a
You're
remarkably
right.
place, you know.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like when you say that, like so I have a virtual pinball machine. It's like it has like a LCD screen, but it's so you can put a bunch of tables on it, but it
Okay.
runs off a computer. And it's
Yeah.
fairly realistic in the sense you can hit it on the side, it will move like if as if there's actually a ball in it. But I
Mhm.
thought if you want to own like real pinball machines, like the older ones, Vegas is probably one of the best places to do that
In the world.
because
Yeah.
we have the Pinball Hall of Fame, and
Yeah.
a lot of places that you live, pinball's it's fun, it's great. But what happens if you live kind of in the middle of nowhere and your
Uh-huh.
pinball machine breaks? Either
Yeah.
you need to know how to fix it, or you're going to have to actually fly somebody in who knows how to fix
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
if you live
Yeah.
in a place like Vegas, there's literal pinball techs who you just give them a call and say, "Hey, I'm like 15 minutes from the strip. I mean, is there any way you can come on
Uh-huh.
a weekend
Yeah.
and fix this thing?" So, you know, it's true. Like what community you're in might have a lot to do with like what's available there.
Has anyone done a good? I mean, look, if you live in Vegas, ultimately you end up at the Pinball Hall of Fame, and you talk to that wonderful dude, and you're just like, "This is an amazing thing. This guy found his magic place and built it." But has anyone
Right?
done a good documentary on him? I don't know. Have they?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean,
Yeah.
something like that could be interesting because I know there's I haven't watched it, but there's some documentary like, oh, what was it on Netflix? I think like High Score or something like that. Well, it
Uh-huh.
was all about a guy's quest to like, to set the high score in this old this old video game.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I do like I'm a pretty big gamer and I'm pretty like I guess I would say equal opportunity. Like I play a
Uh-huh.
lot of retro games and I play new games too.
Yeah.
Most people I know they're either do this thing where oh, I don't play the new games, I just play the old, or they're like, yeah, I would never play a game that's older than like 8 years. Like I
Right.
kind of am like I'm sort of like with video games like I am with movies. I love the whole history of gaming and same with movies. So I think it's fun. There's like a charm to
Yeah.
playing a 30 or 40-year-old game. Not only does
Hell
it
yeah.
remind me of when I was a kid, but they also had a simplicity that sometimes is kind of addicting, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Tetris, it's such a simple game, but there's
Yeah.
something about that stupid game that is so addicting that
I
you
know. It's
just
so
can't put
great.
it down sometimes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up as that stuff all happened, and there were certain games that if I see them, I go play them because I love it. I love track and
Right.
field, getting all sweaty because you're using your
Oh,
fast twitch and your nerves and just banging on the thing.
that
The
was
very
so fun.
first, oh, it was so good. The very first Street Fighter game
Oh
when it
yeah.
came out had like these solo soup bowl kind of thing, like red solo cups. Those plastic things? They were like a plastic bowl upside down. It was
Right.
rubberized, and you would just hit the shit out of it. Bam, bam, and the harder you hit it, the more power you had. And so we literally beat these games to pieces. Track and field, you'd like, oh, none of the buttons work. We beat the shit out of that game.
Yeah.
I love those games.
My dad was an absolutely terrible gamer. And I think part of it is because he was just kind of an old dad. So he was like 40 when he had me and 43 when he had my sister. So I got him to play the track and field thing, like duck hunt. And the only time he would swear more than that is when we were playing golf. He said he learned how to swear on the golf course. So we'd be playing duck hunt. He's like, "Oh, I pushed this thing. I shot right at it." And I'm like, "Well, Papa, you must not have correctly pushed it because then the duck would be dead. But it isn't. It just flew across the street." So he would get so pissed when he was playing that, and it was more fun listening to his frustration than actually playing the game.
Yeah. When I play air hockey, I play it like it is a full contact sport. And so a lot of times I win on intimidation because I'm just like, I'm trying to get the puck to fly off of the table. I'm trying to hit it so hard that the puck has to flobble wobble off,
Right.
And the person playing me is like, "Whoa, I've never played it this intense before." And I'm like, "Come on, let's go."
Air hockey is so much fun too. I know. Like we used to play air hockey all the time. We had an air hockey table up in the attic when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like not until I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 11 or something.
Yeah.
But like we kept, asking like maybe for Christmas, it could be something we get. And just because it was so much fun. And so, I used to pull everybody up to play. Just, I don't know why that game's so much fun. And
it's so much fun, especially with the metal table. The metal table it's so good. And you just polish that puck on your shirt and then bam, and just get after it. Days later, like my elbow would be hurting because I was throwing so hard. I love that game. I don't want to take any more time. We've been talking for an hour. Everybody should go watch The Comic Shop. I've got the Amazon link listed there, but if you type in The Comic Shop, it's going to be great. There's Carrot Top in this thing. Eric Roberts, good job on that. That's fun to get Eric Roberts in something. Anything you want to say, pitch that film for one time, just so people could hear about it and go watch it. But just on the strength of my recommendation, go watch this thing.
So, The Comic Shop is about a guy named Mike who runs a comic store. He's about middle age, but he went to art school. So his real dream was to actually draw comics, not to sell them. And he's kind of like basically given up on his dream because, the years have went by and now he's working at the strip mall. And after the pandemic, the store is just not doing well. So a young customer comes in who also wants to be an illustrator, Brandon. And Brandon kind of like gets Mike out of his shell a bit, almost like reminds him of when he was younger and actually had hopes and dreams. And the two of them kind of form this unlikely friendship where the teenager's like, like it's not too old. I mean, you can, it's not too late for you. You can still give this a go. Yeah. And Mike he just dismisses him a bunch. But until he starts believing like, maybe there is still time for me. And so it's really this inspirational story asking audiences, have you considered like, are you living that life where you think, well, it's too late for me. I gave up on my dreams long ago. And it's kind of asking all of us to find that passion again and reconnect with it. That's what I would say the real message of the movie is. And so I think it's a fun movie. I think it's something that, I've been told by a lot of people, it's fairly family friendly. It has like 4 or 5 F-bombs. It has a 1 punch, but there's no nudity. There's no real violence. And it's just kind of that sort of movie that like, hopefully you watch and makes you feel good at the end of it, which I know was something a lot of us could use more of.
When I watched it, they kept saying to him, and we hear these things in our life, and someone will say, like, "Hey, you got real talent." Like my story with me being a spy, like, "Oh man, that's real talent." But I mostly blow that off, which sounds very familiar to you because that's what happens throughout this movie. Like, "Wow, who did that?" And the guy's like, "Oh, it's me," whatever. But
he doesn't even believe it, right?
Right? No, because he's been conditioned not to because of the challenges, and just he never got the break. And sometimes, it doesn't happen, and so you believe it after a while.
That's right. You believe the story that other people tell you. You're right.
Yeah. So learn to take compliments and go, yeah, there's something there. Let me keep working at this. Get a little better. Maybe you got to be 5% better. That's got potential is what they're saying. And you just got to like rise to it or just keep working at it.
And I think
Yeah.
that's it too. Like one of those things is like in life, just don't give up. My business partner, my former business partner said something, and the reason I'm gonna do the accent is because he's Assyrian born in Iran, and he
Okay.
fled because he's a Christian guy. So
Yeah.
it's not great to be a
Assyrian, yeah.
Christian in Iran. So he was like a big inspiration to me. And he used to say stuff like, my God, man, like we stick with it. Eventually, we will be best people who haven't made it in Hollywood. They will have
Yes.
no choice because we will be the most talented people who have not yet made it.
Yeah.
Like I always
Yeah.
laughed, and I was like, there's a certain logic to that actually.
There is. There
So it's like
is.
if
When
you
I say I've
stick
been
with
doing
something,
this show for 10 years and 2,000 episodes, people, holy fuck, they're not ready for that. But you end up being this thing. Like, there's just no doubt about it. You know how to make movies. I know how to make podcasts. And you're welcome to go to somewhere else if they don't want to hire Jonathan. You don't want to hire Pete. But understand,
Sure.
I'm going to keep making podcasts. You're going to keep making movies. And so you can go try to find the right person for you. But we are going to make these things. And that's to your Assyrian friends' credit. Like, that's right. Like, you just become the thing that you are because you've done it so much.
Right. You got to stick with it. I mean, anything takes a long time. And I think that at this point, I actually have the opposite problem of Mike is I'm like, I just don't really know how to do anything else. So I'm kind of stuck with filmmaking because I think it might be a little bit late for me to learn a new skill. So I'm going to have to stick with what I actually know.
Well, and again, I don't want to keep you too long, but there's that whole thing of you become. So I don't know if you watched the new series that came out on Netflix called The Gentleman. It's a Guy Ritchie thing.
Not yet. Oh, I love Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. And I do too. I love his stuff, right? But he's now getting paid to make things with people who make things, and so he's running this show. And he writes the first episode or two, and then you can see it gets a little bit away from Guy Ritchie, and it's 8 episodes, and so it has to be a bigger story. And I'm like, oh man, this thing would have been a tight 2 hours. But okay, and that's one thing. Like if you can make something longer, boy, Hollywood likes to do it now, And so you see Guy Ritchie, and he's further away from the actual thing that makes him great. And I hope. Look, I'm not saying I think The Gentleman was a fun ride, right? But I wish it was about 4 hours shorter, frankly.
Yeah,
and I love
I know.
all Guy Ritchie stuff.
That happens. Like, from what I understand, the streamers' metrics have told them that these series keep people more engaged, and that's why you subscribe. I'm not like that, and so I have friends who do that to me. What? You're a filmmaker and you haven't seen insert X series,
right?
And I say, like, I'm not a series guy. I've always been a film guy. I don't really care because I don't want to make series. So you're watching everything for fun. I don't watch movies for fun. I mean, I like them, but I watch them for work because I need to know what's being made, and that's the job. So if I'm not really interested in TV, I watch that for fun. So my time is like anyone else's time, where it's like, of course I've seen the big things. I've seen Breaking Bad, but I'm always behind. So like we're just finishing Modern Family. That's not a new show. That's pretty old. But I try to keep up, but there is so much TV that a friend will tell me, well, have you seen so and so? And okay, I haven't seen it. So I put on my list and I go watch it. 3 weeks later, a different friend's like, oh man, you haven't seen Adolescence? Oh, what are you doing? Like, so then you go catch up on that, and then there's the new one. Well, you haven't seen Yellow Jackets? Like, you got to see Yellow Jackets. So it's like as soon as you watch a show, your friends have like 3 new ones that you apparently should have seen.
But here's the thing about that, though, and once you know how to do something, you know how to do it. And so, yes, we have to stay current and everything else, right? But those metrics that Netflix uses that says, hey, make this thing 8 episodes long, just made me not want to, no matter what I do, watch a Guy Ritchie project.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, I went on the ride, and I'm like, but will I go on the next one? Probably not. Probably not,
it gives you kind of a negative, a bad feel about it. Yeah,
especially when I go, wow, that one was good, but that wasn't Guy Ritchie good. And they had all the Guy Ritchie things, but then I look and see who wrote it, and I'm like, not written by him. I mean, he's executive directing, and I'm positive he's got his hands all over it, but it broke the spell for me. And I don't think it was as good. Some people are going to be like, it was the best. I watched that ridiculous Addams Family redo the other day, a couple years ago when it came out. and people raved about this thing. Man, I had 10 minutes for that. As soon as they got the piranhas in the pool at the beginning, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going down this road. And they lost me instantly because it was too much. And so I don't mind watching something. Like, I've never really seen a full episode of what's that nerd sitcom show?
Big Bang Theory or
Big Bang Theory. Yeah. I've never watched a full episode of that. And I'm like, I've seen every episode of Cheers. I've seen every episode of Wings. I've seen every episode of, there is no new episode of that format. And that's not because I don't like it, not because it's not any good. I've seen all of it. I know the jokes that are coming because it's a formula.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, that is how it goes, you know?
I mean, you watch Seinfeld for years. You watch, whatever it is, Friends, and all of a sudden you're like, here comes the whatever, and then you see an old Dick Van Dyke show and it's the same device.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's the same goddamn room, as a matter of fact. When they come down the one staircase, I'm like, that's Laverne and Shirley's old apartment in LA, kind of thing.
Right. That's one of the biggest reasons, that I do watch so many movies, because I think that if you want to make a movie, you need to know what's come before. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody, I get it. Most people don't have the time I do to watch 700 movies a year. But somebody will like mention a movie and be like, oh my God, I love that movie so much. It was so original. And I'm like, I mean, okay, it was basically a remake of this 80s film, which was basically a remake of the 60s film, which was pretty much a remake of this 1947 movie. And so it's like, what people think is original, it's usually not that original. It's usually been done a lot of times before. But that's why they keep doing it, because the way we talk about movies, like I talk about them as a film history buff. So I hear people go, oh, isn't that old movie? What did it come out in like 2005? Oh, okay. No. So just so you know, 2005 is not an old movie. An old movie is 1940s, 1950s. That's an old movie.
Yeah.
New American cinema started in the 70s. So those are considered new movies that are after about 1975.
Right.
And so, but you talk to young people, oh, this is an old thing. I think it came out in 2017. 2017 is old now? There's been 120 years of cinema history. I don't think that's old. It's like one of those things, like lack of perspective.
It's true. Going back to The Gentleman, there's a lot of that, because they've done their work. And so when the main character, is a ton of Godfather in this movie, right? Because it's mobsters and everything else. But he does this moment. It's lit. It probably is damn near the same chair that he sits in. And I'm like, oh, that's Michael Corleone right there. And by the way, his brother, who's a fuck up, is named Freddie. And I'm like, wow. And they put him out in a fishing boat on a lake. And I'm like, are they going to kill this guy right now?
That's great.
Yeah. All right, listen, I've taken even more of your time than I said I was going to.
It's okay. No worries.
Super fun talking with you. Everybody, go check out the Comic Shop. The Comic Shop is going to, if you like comic shops, first off, it's required watching because you nailed the vibe. It's so good. And there's happenings and all kinds of good stuff. But you'll love it. It's fantastic. So everybody watch Comic Shop. This is Jonathan's movie. What's coming up next for you, man?
That's a good question. I'm going to take a little bit of time after this to figure out what is next, because I've got a couple of projects I'm excited about. I don't know what one I want to like go towards next, if that makes sense. Like I always come up with so many ideas, but it's like you have to chart a course and which thing speaks to me the most. Because even when I chose Comic Shop, I had about 5 or 6 scripts ready, and I'm like, well, I don't know, like what am I going to do? So that I'm kind of between things where I'm like, do I go this way or that way? What am I really feeling? What do I want to sink 3 years into? Basically, that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah. And you only get so many bites of this apple. All right. Well, hang on one sec. I'll come say goodbye to you, everybody else. I'll see you all tomorrow. I'll be remote from a movie studio tomorrow. So we'll do more movie talk. All right, man. Everybody, I'll see you all soon. I'll wrap back to you, Jonathan. Hang in there.